when talking about the US right now, it's 8th straight day of protest against the death of George Floyd. And right now we have Nad Bunnag updating this story for us. Nad, so what's the latest situation?
So it's already the 8th day and the protests are still going on, but it seems that the protests are becoming more peaceful and calm compared to previous days. So let's start with in New York. There were some instances of looting, but not as severe compared to yesterday. There were some clashing between the police and the protesters who tried to cross the Manhattan Bridge from Brooklyn to Manhattan, but then the protesters were then allowed to leave the bridge. So slight clash between the police and the protesters. And besides in New York City, in LA, there's also protests as well. But the police arrested a very large group of protesters outside the mayor's residence. Some of the cities still have violent clashes compared to other cities that are more on the peaceful side. For example, like in Washington, D.C., the police have fired tear gas at the protesters as well. There's one city that's pretty interesting. In Houston, Texas, saw the biggest protest as the relatives of George Floyd also joined the movement.
Yeah, and at one city in particular, it seems the focus is very much on Seattle.
Yes.
What's really going on there?
Okay, Seattle, we're still seeing violent protests in Seattle here, and they also extended their curfew to this Saturday, which is the 6th of June, because of the protests and the looting are still continuing until today. Interestingly enough, the Seattle Office of Police Accountability received about 14,000 complaints on the conduct of police officers during the protests. One of the allegations are pepper spraying a young girl, as well as peaceful protesters, punching protesters onto the ground, as well as breaking windows of the store. So we can see that even the police get reported for such behavior.
So much violence.
You mentioned Houston. And
Yeah.
there was a very interesting development there when a police officer, in fact he is a chief of Houston police, who had a very strong reaction to President Trump's remarks about how police and state governor were too weak in dealing with the protesters,
Yep.
and urged them to use overwhelming force to subdue the protesters. So what did he say?
Okay, I'm a bit afraid to say this. Okay, if you don't have something constructive to say, just keep your mouth shut.
A very direct message from a police officer to the
Very-
president of the country.
Very direct here, but to repeat that, it's from the Houston police chief towards President Trump with the way he handled the whole situation, particularly with his reaction towards the mayors and governors who are not responding so well with the protests in his perspective. By the way, President Donald Trump also had another backlash with the way he posed in front of the church with a Bible. So it did spark a big controversy here because, okay, there are a group of people who agreed with his actions, but the bishops and the conservative people are not so happy with what he was doing because they felt that President Trump used the church for political purposes.
Yeah.
It was still I think the way that the security details prepared for his arrival at the church was even more controversial, using tear gas to disperse those protesters, only just to have the president being there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even the way he holds Bible upside down is being very much criticized.
Yes.
Yeah, for the way he just tried to have this photo opportunity without really communicate with the protester. So that's very controversial. So how does he try to defend himself after being so much criticized?
Okay, so he defended himself on Twitter saying, "You got it wrong. If the protesters were so peaceful, why did they light the church on fire the night before? People liked my walk." So that is how he actually responded to the criticism with the way he held his Bible for the photo op in front of the church.
Yeah.
I think many people see his appearance in front of the church more as something to make up for what was reported as his sheltering in a bunker in the White House
Yeah.
at the height of the protest. And so that's why he was so infuriated by this kind of report. So he wanted to show to American people that I'm the president of law and order, and I'm here. I mean, I'm not afraid of anything.
And he even posted, there's a recent tweet like around another half an hour ago saying law and order. Simple as that. So it's just something to repeat that he is going to be the president of law and order.
Yeah, he must be under stress right now.
Definitely.
Tremendous stress of how he handled COVID-19 and the protest.
Yes, definitely.